everyone, welcome back to Nia Natters. I believe this is part 5, I want to say, and this is the last one of the podcast episodes where we're just talking about me, myself and I. So the next 5 will be around coaching questions and motivational things like that. So this podcast is called Let's Talk About Personal Growth, My Journey to Self-Improvement. So we're literally just going to be talking about some challenges that I found within my life about myself, things I didn't like, how I grew through those and improved myself, how my mindset shifted during this and how I did this, so the strategies that worked for me, and how this overcame specific obstacles and what I learned during that time. And then we have some questions at the end, but I'm hoping that the questions get answered as I speak, because I feel like both of them, or all of them, I think the majority of them anyway, will be answered through my story. So let's get straight into it. I've got quite a decent story to cover. So yeah. So let's focus mainly on myself before university, during university and after university. That's how I'm gonna show the difference in myself, because the main turning point for me was in year 2 of university. I was in university 3 years, so I will briefly explain how I grew up and not how I grew up, because I know we've touched upon that quite a lot in previous episodes, but how I shaped myself when I was young, and how that fed into my actions in university, causing me to change and come out better. I think this is gonna surprise a lot of you, so please bear with me. I am not proud of my story, but in a way I am, because then it showed my improvement, and I'll try and explain it as best as I can remember it. So basically, when I was growing up, I grew up obviously being the centre of everything, because I was an only child and I was self-centred, and obviously because I didn't have siblings, I became very reserved within myself, self-sufficient. And because of the trauma that I had from my parents splitting up, I always struggled with commitment in terms of love and trust, because I always thought, oh, someone's just gonna come into my life and then leave me, and then so is no point in me opening myself up to love, because I just know how it's gonna end. And I always told myself that, therefore whenever but on the flip side, as any other teenage girl or person around 18 years old, I was right, I want a relationship, I want that love to be given to me, but I just don't want to give it back so I don't get hurt. And obviously that is not the right way to deal with things, but that was just me. And when it came to friends and stuff, I was still very wary of who I gave my trust to and who I opened myself up with. So the first year of uni, I met someone who is my best friend. You might see her on my streams sometimes, called Sunny. And we were very similar. So we both were in the same dormitory, and we kind of just hit it off at some point in the kitchen, in one of the first days of uni, and we were inseparable throughout the 3 years. She was the person that I could go to with anything. She was the sister I never had, and bless her, she was going through her own things in her own life, and then she also had me to deal with, and I was still like I was like, I try and be the perfect person. I'm doing quotation marks, but obviously I was not perfect at all. I had like jealousy issues. I was like always insistent that I was right, even though my behavior and actions weren't good. Like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't out partying all the time or anything like that, but just some of the ways that my personality was, I didn't see a problem with them when other people did. So like, for example, if Sunny made friends with someone and was like, oh, I am going out with them to lunch or something today, instead of me being like, oh, like, I'm so happy for you, enjoy your time, I would be sat there worrying, being like, oh, well, this is me done, like, that's my friendship over, she's going to leave me for them, she's going to spend all her time with them, and I'm going to be alone again. And by creating this thing in my brain where I was like always insistent on I'm going to be alone, it wasn't cultivating the right thing for me to. Thankfully, Sunny was like, she was not put off by this. She was like, no, I'm not, I'm still here, like, you're my best friend, there's nothing's gonna change just because I go out with someone else for a couple of hours. But I would always be like worrying about it, and then I'd be like, oh, I don't want you to go, kind of ridiculously. So my jealousy was just like off the scale at this point, and like my brain was always working overtime about being alone. And by thinking this way, I made myself alone. And actually, there was nothing wrong with being alone. It was just in my head that I was going to end up alone because I was going to have no friends, because they would have all left me for someone else, someone better, and I'd never have like a relationship because they'd always find someone better than me because I was so rubbish. So I was always really like self-deprecating in that way, even though like now looking back, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, I'm a great person to be around, I think. I might sound really big-headed, but like, and I had a major problem with going to do anything by myself. If I went shopping, Sunny would come with me. If I had to go somewhere, I'd ask Sunny to go with me, and things like that. And it was just, it got to a point, like, I didn't even realise, like, this was when I was completely oblivious to the reasoning behind why I was like this. I just thought, oh, it's the way I am, like, it's fine. So then this was in first year, and then in first year as well, I would go out with other people. That's another thing. I had this weird thing where I would be like, no one else can have friends, or no one else can like someone else, but I'm allowed to have as many friends as I want and like as many people as I want. So I got into a situation a few times where I would go out like to a bar or to a club with someone, and I would bring someone home, and that would be me trying to like, not, I wouldn't sleep with them or anything, but like I just wanted that the company. So these guys would be coming home with me, like back to my dorm, and they'd be like, you know, why am I here? Like, let's sleep together. And I'd just be there like, no, I actually just want to talk for hours and tell someone my life story and get to know people more, because that was my attempt at weirdly trying to get a relationship. But obviously these guys were like not in the club for good reasons, so that never happened. And I always just like waited on them to text me back the next day, and they never would. And I was like, oh, it's because like I'm not worthy of love, I just suck, I'm not interesting enough. But actually, like, good on me for not giving these guys what they wanted. And anyways, I was very good at holding my own in that way. But at the time as well, there was this guy in our friendship group that I was like, oh, he's okay. Like, I'll see if he likes me, or I'll make him like me. And there was also this other guy that was in my hometown at the time, who was just like, had been in love with me for a few years at this point, maybe 2 years, 3 years. And I always like kind of threw him bait to like make sure that he was still interested, and he would be like my backup of like, if I didn't find anyone, then it would be him. And I was just like really horrible like that, where I was just like, oh, I'll have like backup plans and I'll have this and that and the other, when it was just really like messing other people around, and that's other people's lives at the end of the day. And I would hate for that to happen to me, and yet I was so okay with it happening to other people. So then the guy in uni, one of our friends, we'll call him Y. Or, yeah, we'll call him Y. He would be like, the way that I got him is we had like a big party with like a specific club that we were in uni. So we all had a party and we hired out a club. And I would like try and make him jealous by like dancing with other boys, sitting with other boys, drinking with other boys. And then my lowest point was when like all that was happening, someone, I think, drugged me in the bar, and I like rushed to the loo, vomited, and then was just sat in the cubicle. And I can remember like bits of this, but I was just like sat on the cubicle floor, refusing to come out until Y came in and got me. Like, I was I was just so horrible. Like, I cringe thinking about this. But this is obviously my villain origin story. And then he came into the girls' bathroom because I blackout refused to come out without him coming in to get me. And like that just kick-started. He stayed with me in my room that night, and the next day he was like, right, let's date then. And I was like, whoa, you can like me, but you know, I don't want to put a tag on this because maybe I want to see other people. And he was like, no, that's not, like, okay, whatever, I'll just accept that at the moment, but that's not how it works, is it? And so I went to work that day, and then I can't remember what happened, but during the same year, he went away for like a weekend somewhere to do like a competition. And the guy that I was flirting with to make him jealous asked me out to go watch a movie, I think, or asked me out for dinner. So behind his back, I went out and went to dinner with him, and then like went home, and then the next day he asked me out again and was like, let's like watch a movie over my house or my flat. And I was like, yeah, sure, thinking like completely innocently that it was just a movie and nothing else. But like, yeah, I can't even, I hate thinking about this part of myself, but you know, maybe it can inspire someone else. So I went over, and obviously it didn't end up like being just the movie. I wanted to watch the movie. He had something else on his mind, and at that night, something really bad nearly happened to me, and that kind of like kicked me into a bit of a realization. That was like the start of me changing, but not yet. Like worse things needed to, not worse things, but like other bad things needed to happen to me for me to realize. And so I kind of went home and I had like mascara all running down my face and I felt like dirty and filthy and stuff. And that was the day that Y came back from his competition, and he was like, I told him what happened, and he was absolutely fuming with me because obviously I'd quote unquote cheated on him, or I'd intended to, but I didn't. I just thought, well, I did, but I just thought that we were like going to watch a movie. Anyway, so he was like, some other things happened during that year where he like tried to get back at me by doing worse things, and then one night we went to the library with this girl and he ended up like getting with this girl, but he would come back and like stay with me at night, and then he was like, oh, I can't do this anymore, like me and her are kind of a thing. And I was like, I don't care, I don't like you anymore because you did that. So me having that done to me with him and this other girl was like completely out of the question, but yet when I did it, it was completely fine. That was like my what's the word, like I was just contradicting the whole situation anyway. And he was like, yeah, well, I'm not going to be another one of the guys that are just waiting around for you and like coming to your beck and call, because I deserve better. And I was like, you know what, fair enough, like you can go anyway because you're dirty. And yeah, so funnily enough, I say funnily enough, this is all like me making a joke out of a terrible situation, but the guy from my hometown that was still in love with me actually came around the next week to come and comfort me because of the entire situation, and I led him on then as well. Anyway, that was just like a summary of my first year in uni, and I was just like, I didn't want to be alone, I didn't want to commit to people, I messed people around, I didn't care if I hurt people. So when I came back in the second year after going home, I was like, right, this is the year where I don't want to be messed around by men, because I thought, oh yeah, he messed me around, I didn't mess him around at all, which I did. And he was still like around a bit, but he was still seeing that girl, like they were official. No, why do I keep saying he? And I was like, right, this is my year, me and Sunny together, going to the gym, self-improvement, health. I started like kicking myself up the backside. I was like, no guys this year. This is all about like self-improvement. So I started going to the gym like every day, because this was the start of COVID as well. This was 2019, 2020. Started going to the gym. Started writing a journal every night. I had structured days where I would be working on myself, self-improvement. I would sleep at a decent time and get enough sleep. I would do yoga. I would stretch every morning. I would read self-help books. And I would do a lot of self-reflection. So I had a specific journal where I would get questions off. I gotta say, like, this is a good hack to mention. Pinterest is such a good place for self-reflection questions. And I would just be on there for hours, like writing down all questions to like really get to know myself better, get to know why I didn't act the way that I should act, why I felt the way that I felt, and I really got to the bottom of my thoughts and my trauma and just awareness about myself, and telling myself like it's okay to be like this and we can work on it day by day. Obviously change isn't instant and it's over time, and even this is the cringiest bit of my days at that point. It was every day I would look at myself in the mirror, and instead of me being like, oh my god, you're fat, you're chubby, you need to lose weight, you're ugly, this is why boys don't like you, this is why you can't find love, because you're this way, because you're that, I made myself every day be like, you're beautiful, you're worthy, you're trying, and I admire you. You're worthy of love, and I invited that kind of feeling into my life. And then literally 3 months into doing that, Sam came along. And I tried all of the tactics that I used to try with him. He would be like, well, first of all, he popped, because we met on a language exchange website, because I was learning Chinese and he wanted to learn English. This is our relationship start story now. And I would like to state right here and now, it was not me that cultivated a good relationship and gave me these expectations. It was Sam, and I thank him every day of my life for it, and I tell him that I appreciate him every day of my life. So we started off like I helped him more with English because I was also learning Korean at this point, and it was just too much for me. And I was going through like a family, my grandfather was really ill, and he just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then Sunny had to leave because she had her own personal issues and she couldn't stay in uni. She's just studied from home instead. So I was technically left to my own devices and had to face like a fear of mine, which was being alone and doing things alone. But I kept going to the gym, I kept spending time by myself, I kept like improving myself in my room, things like that, even though we started having to study from our room and not go to class. So that was like my worst nightmare of being alone made real. Obviously we lived with someone else called Jason, but it was not the same without Sunny, you know what I mean? But this was the perfect, when you get pushed into something that you think is the worst case scenario, you can be very surprised on how well you adapt to it. Anyways, back to Sam. So I met Sam in December of 2019. So that was 3 months after I started uni and had been doing self-development. At this point, I'd met Chloe and Jenny at the start of the year, so I had friends that got me through COVID in Sunny's absence. Not saying that they're comparable to Sunny, because I love them both dearly, and they also helped me on my self-development journey as well, and I'll get into that a bit later. So with Sam, he messaged me during Christmas break, so I was back at home, and he messaged me and he was like complimenting me and being really nice to me, and I was like, oh, I've had so many boys do this on this language exchange app, because all they're doing is like, because they see a British girl, they're like, oh my gosh, let's talk to her, and then they get bored after a few days because I'm really boring, and then they just go. But every day I would wake up and be like, right, Sam's not going to message me now because I'm boring. Sam's going to not message me now because I'm boring and he's had enough. But every day he would be there, and we've literally spoken every single day since meeting, apart from one day. And that was the day that I was like, yeah, he's gone. And I was like really disappointed and hurt in my heart. But he just had to work a 24-hour shift, so he just didn't have access to his phone. But he kept showing up for me when I couldn't even show up for myself. And I honestly think that like fate wanted that moment to happen, and we were meant to meet and be together. God, I didn't imagine getting emotional. And I would try things like, oh, you know, I'm this, I'm that, and he's like, oh, you're really not? I don't know why you're saying that about yourself, like, stop saying that about yourself. And he really helped me on my self-development journey as well. And then in February of 2020, he bought me my first ever Valentine's gift, and I was like, oh my gosh, I thought it was just me that felt this way, but obviously he feels that way. But I was like, maybe he's just doing it because he feels sorry for me, so don't get like too caught up. And then I was like to him, you know, why did you do that? And he was like, oh, because I think you're a great person and I really like you. And I was like, okay, but if this goes where I think is going to go, I don't want to call you my boyfriend, and I don't want to put any labels on this. I was still like in that mindset. And usually people would just be like, oh yeah, sure, and then like get bored, like in the previous year. Why did the same? But like that was also my fault, because I wasn't interested in him in that way. But with Sam, I committed myself to being like, no, actually give this guy a chance and stop being in your old ways, like just focus on him and see what happens. And when I said to him, like, I don't want to label anything, he was like, yeah, that's completely fine, like take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere. And for my younger self that was always scared that everyone was just gonna get up and go away, and from the child who my dad left behind when he left my mum, even though like me and my dad's relationship is great and I saw him like every week, he kind of nurtured that child that needed to hear that. So yeah, and then every day after that he would say good morning to me, good night to me, he would tell me what he was doing in the day. We started video calling because he wanted, I always remember like our first ever video call as well, where he literally had notes in front of him and he was like, hello, you're so pretty, I'm going to take a shower now, bye-bye. And that was it. And yeah, our relationship just like started going at a pace that I was comfortable with. I just kind of told myself to get a grip, and actually, because he was such a nice guy, to not mess him around, let it just be him and see what happens, because the worst thing that can happen is that I'm back to square one without a guy, like without a boyfriend, and that isn't the worst thing ever anymore. So I think a mix of like COVID, a family illness, and Sam was like the formula I needed to get myself together. And don't get me wrong, my self-development did not stop there, and I'll get to like present day life in a second. But like wrapping up on like my second year, obviously I had Chloe and Jenny. They were literally like round the corner in their own dorms in the same university, so we would be like video calling all day every day, which also helped me with kind of my loneliness as well. And that's how we've got like such a strong friendship now. And we also had Chris as well. All four of us would just be on call all day, like literally 24 hours, unless we were sleeping. We would be on video call and playing games and stuff. Don't ask me how I got through uni. That's another story to tell. But yeah, they're like my part of my backbone now. Like, I don't know where I would be without them, and Sunny as well. I had another point to make. I can't remember what. Oh yeah, so almost around a year after meeting Sam, my grandfather passed away, and that was like so this is like quite similar to a question that I had for this podcast, and it was about commitment and stuff. So when things get hard, I tend to push people away by being horrible to them, or like try and get rid of them so that I don't get hurt, you know what I mean? So I was already hurting from the death of my grandfather, and I just couldn't, I thought that I coped with it well, but actually looking back, I did all my crying before he passed. But then the week of him passing, I said to Sam, like, oh, we're never going to meet each other, let's just like leave it here. You're a great person, but I just don't think I'm good enough for you. And Sam just went, oh, I totally respect that, but here's so if you feel like that, I'm just gonna go, and I don't believe in once you started loving someone that you could just be friends, so I'm just gonna like take my leave and go. Thank you for being so honest, and I wish you all the best. And so I was like, yep, that's definitely the best thing that I could have done in this situation, when actually no, it wasn't. And that it lasted a week. I lasted a week without Sam, and before he like went away as well, he was like, oh, here's our 1 year anniversary of knowing each other. I'll give it to you early because obviously we're not going to see each other now, so happy anniversary, and sent me like a picture of this drawing of me jumping on a horse that I used to jump, and he'd hand painted it all. So, and then he like posted a little update thing on the chat thing that we used. Like, you can just add posts generally for people that you're friends with on there, and he was like, oh, my room is especially cold tonight, noting the lack of a person's presence, no matter how many blankets or how much heating I use on myself, I still shake uncontrollably and stuff like that. Very poetic, very emotional he is, but it's a good thing. And I lasted a week, and every day I would cry and miss him and be like, why did I do this? And then I'd be like, oh, it'll get better, this is just like low-key heartbreak of someone that you never even met in person. And then it lasted a week, and then my stepdad was like, Nia, you're obviously like upset, just go, and he's worth your time, he seems like a good person. At this point they'd all met him through video calls and stuff, So I messaged him and I was like, hi, I've been thinking this was not the right choice for me to do. I miss you and I want to make things work. And I will try to be a better person for you so that I'm worthy of dating you, instead of me being oh, I'm not worthy of him because I haven't self-developed myself enough yet to date him. Instead, it's setting the bar higher and being able to meet the expectations, or your own expectations for dating a certain person. And even now, I struggle with trying to meet my own expectations that I have for dating Sam, because sometimes I'm just he's so not so far ahead of me, but in some ways he's amazing. And so, and even now, when dating Sam, I still sometimes sit here and think he's so tolerant of me, even when I still have bad parts of myself. But for him, I will try to improve myself still and work through it to show up for him. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else for me to say on this topic. But even current life, I'm still working on stuff, and I feel self-development and progress is never linear. You're always going to have good days and bad days, and any new situation you find that you and your significant other, or just yourself, has never experienced before, it might even set you off. There's still some scenarios and situations where I get triggered, and old Nia comes out, and even though it's not a pretty sight, we just have to learn, reflect, and do better next time. But I really encourage people to work on their own self-development, no matter what that looks like. I think every person has a different way of self-development, so your journey might look a lot different to, say, mine. Oh, and another thing as well I forgot to mention, during that week of not speaking to Sam, I was the way that I knew that I really loved him and wanted to be with him is I would sit there and I'd be even though I said that someone else better deserves him, who can treat him better than I do, I would still sit there and be I wanna be with him, and I wanna learn to treat him better, because I will show him the admiration that I feel for him all the time. And I was never an emotional person. Well, I've always been emotional, but emotional to myself. But I've never been an affectionate person until I was with Sam, and I never thought that, looking at me these days, I never thought that I would act this way towards someone, because I just never thought that it was possible. But I think when you find the right person who will give you the space to become that person, that will show them the admiration and the love that is in your heart, it is possible. I hope this helped. Anyway, I'm just going to go over to some questions now. So Marcus asked, or said, I've often been thinking lately about whether or not I want to start a relationship when I get older. I've been saying I want to be a dad and a husband when the time is right, but I'm not sure that it's even in the cards for me, because I'd rather stay with my special someone till death do us part, where I get cold feet thinking about it. Mainly because I don't know how to best maintain a lifelong relationship like that. Also, I don't know how I may find the right woman, but I'd rather it be natural. If that's not improvement, you can ignore it. I think that, like I stated in my story, I had to go through a lot of self-development to even be open and considerate about changing how I acted towards someone who was interested in a relationship. And I think that this also connects with believing that you're good enough to be in a relationship or be a father or be a husband. It's all about being in your best self to find the person that you'd want as a wife, because it's all about what's the word? Not ideology. Well, yeah, kind of ideology, where you have to think about the type of wife that you'd like and not settle for anything else, even if it takes like a few years of, however long. I think as long as you have standards for yourself, because anyone could find someone, but it's all about making sure that it's the right person for you. And personally for me, I found someone who ticked all my boxes, but also had that patience to wait for me to be okay with progressing in a relationship. So where you said that you're fine with committing to someone till death do us part, which is brilliant, that's such a good way of being, so you're loyal, but getting cold feet about it, it's because you're probably thinking too far ahead. So you're not focusing on the first step of meeting someone that you'd like to get to know. You're already thinking about marriage and children when you haven't even met someone yet. So I think the first thing is opening yourself up to meeting people, even if that's just for you two to become friends because she's not the right person. But I always think that you'll find someone naturally in your life at some point, as long as you're in the right place at the right time. And the best place that you can be is to be the best version of yourself and be working on that in the meantime, so that you're more confident on opening yourself up to receive love and give yourself love. Like I said, I worked tirelessly on myself for months before I met Sam, and I wasn't even expecting to meet Sam. So just focusing on yourself until life comes around and gives you a person, I think, is a good way to go. Therefore, you've not been wasting your time waiting, but you've also got something out of your time as well, if that makes sense. And don't worry about so far into the future. When I first met Sam, I couldn't even think about marriage, and now I'm like, get this ring on my finger, boy. Simp said, the thing that I'm currently facing is always feeling alone and empty inside. I feel like I'm in a prison of my own making because I'm afraid of making friends. I always stay at home, and if I go out, I do go alone or with some family members. At school, I stay silent all the time. This is the worst feeling I experience every day. I wish I had overcome my fears a long time ago. I'm always running away from reality, and this gets me into many problems, but I improved a little when I started developing myself a year and a half ago. I still have psychological problems, otherwise everything is fine. So I would definitely say, like I said, look on Pinterest, look at self-reflection questions and write them down. Write down your honest answer, even if you have to sit there for a while and think about what the answer would be before you wrote them down. And then analyse what you've written and why you act a specific way. And why you feel like that. Maybe it's to do with how you were raised, how your family treats you, your parents' situation, something you've seen, something you've experienced. It's always down to that. It's always about your environment or how you were raised or how you live. And it's all about actively and intentionally improving that every single day. So write down these questions, answer the questions, read back over them, and see if you can figure anything out on why you feel alone and empty, why you're afraid of making friends, why you stay silent all the time at school, and why you run away from reality. What's so scary about reality for you to be like this? Also, maybe a therapist. I love going to therapy. I think that it really clears my brain and lifts weights off my shoulders, so I always suggest that. But yeah, definitely start there. And when you found out why you do something, then it's time to start thinking about how you can change your reaction to something and what that might look like for you. I hope that helped anyway. And then Marcus has another question. I think one of my defining qualities is that I'm very self-deprecating, say sorry all the time, even for things I didn't do, and because I always go hard on myself when I do or say something bad, even thinking said things sometimes. And while I think it's important to never let myself get away with said things, I sometimes worry my deprecation is a bit too much and happens way too often. Could that be an episode for another... Oh, sorry. So, I already answered that part of the question, but like I said, I was always very self-deprecating, but it's all about mindfulness in this situation. So, for example, if you said sorry and you didn't need to say sorry, next time when you feel like saying sorry, try and be mindful and be like, do I need to say sorry? Is this my fault? Should I say anything at all? Why do I feel sorry? Maybe look a bit deeper as well, why you always feel like being harsh on yourself, or why you hold yourself to such a standard where you think that you shouldn't be making mistakes. If you think about it, right? Because I used to look up at my parents and be like, wow, they're adults. They're so put together. They know exactly what they're doing. But actually, if you just take a step back and you look around you and put yourself in other people's shoes, that they are in fact just going through life for the first time as well and have to learn things every day. They have to learn like how to do things and have had to learn things at least once in their life. It really puts you in a different perspective of not being so harsh on yourself, because like you're going through life for the first time like everyone else. You don't need to be so harsh on yourself. You're still learning. It's like, I always say to people that if you make mistakes, that's completely fine, because you're still learning, and it's okay to be learning at this age and make mistakes, because if you don't make mistakes, you won't try things, and trying and adapting and evolving is the most important thing in life. If we were children, if we were babies and we didn't make mistakes, we'd never learn to walk, to run, to talk, because we'd always be afraid of making a teeny tiny mistake. And if you step back and think, oh, is this thing that I'm being so harsh on myself such a big deal? Like, will it change my future, or will it just be something that I look back on and be like, oh, I can't even remember what that was? You know what I mean? So it's all about developing yourself to be... One of the things that I learnt in the second year when I was doing my self-development is that you're always going to have to live with yourself. So you need to give yourself the most love. Take time out of your day to spend with yourself and really grow yourself as a person and shape yourself, because the more rounded you are, the better you deal with things, and the more open to possibilities you will be. And if you start working on yourself, the easier it'll be in the future to work on yourself. Once you start it, you get used to it and you know what works for you, what doesn't. And I think that's really important, especially in this day and age where like everything's always changing. If you're adaptable and you're self-aware as well, self-awareness is always great, because when you start being self-aware, Marcus, maybe you can do the thing that I suggested to Simp as well. Find self-awareness questions on Pinterest, write them down and answer them as honestly as you can. Maybe even return to them in a few months, or ask similar questions but in a different way, and see if there's anything else you can uncover on why you're so self-deprecating. And if you are very self-deprecating, then that can also affect your opportunities for a relationship, because you're very harsh on yourself and you're not giving yourself the option to provide love to yourself, and therefore you don't feel like you deserve a relationship. So I hope this helped. Add any other questions or comments down below. Let me know what you think or thought about this podcast. Apologies that I got a bit emotional, but like Sam really sets me off. That's another thing as well, just quickly. Sam really opened my eyes. This is why finding someone who you know that you can grow with, the person that you find doesn't have to love. How do I explain this? Don't feel like the person that you meet needs to love current you from then on, because you're always changing, and as long as they're acceptable to you growing and self-developing, that's the best relationship you can get. Like Sam's taught me so much. He's taught me how to go and sit and be more disciplined on myself, but because I'm so harsh on myself on how much I need to get done each day, he was like, just simplify it, it's okay. He's a lot more tolerant on me than he is on himself, but still it's really helped me. He's helped me a lot with how I act, how tolerant I am towards him, how I think about things, how I react to things. And it's a two-way street, right? So like, if something I do bothers him because I'm horrible to him, for example, I'm very strict when driving or being driven. So because I feel like the way I drive is the way to drive, I know, big-headed, I know. I've shouted at him a lot for his driving when he's only just passed his driving test, and we had to have a good few conversations about it. And for me to understand like why it is I feel the need to shout or snap at him about something, and it's because like I no longer have that control over the car, and that makes me anxious. So that's something that I need to work on moving forward, and that's not his problem, even though I was snapping at him because of my own insecurities. You know, you've always got to, when you argue with your significant other, it's not like you versus them, it's you versus the problem, both of you versus the problem. So making sure that you have that communication and wanting to develop in your relationship, that's so important as well. And I couldn't think of a better person to be with, to self-develop with, than Sam. And also Marcus, now I hope you can see why we're a happy couple, but I'm definitely not the expert in this situation. But I hope that this provides some insight anyway. But I thank you for listening to my rambling, and I hope that this was moderately useful. And if it was, please leave a like, and yeah, keep an eye out for my next podcast post for some questions to be asked. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye, everyone.